Hello, and welcome to Conscious Curiosities, where we unlock the wisdom of the universe which lies within us. I'm Maria Luz, your host, a certified hypnotist, astrologer, and developing psychic medium. Today's episode is entitled, What the Dwarf Planet Sedna and Ceres Teach Us About Cancel Culture and Higher Consciousness, Part 2. In this episode, we explore the following: the significance of Ceres in astronomy, mythology, and astrology, the lessons Ceres may bring to our individual and collective evolution, and how to understand Ceres in your birth chart by sign and by house. First, I'll talk about the astronomy. So Ceres is the closest dwarf planet to Earth and the largest object in the Kuiper belt, which is that asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Ceres actually looks like the mother of those other asteroids and objects in that Kuiper belt because it is so much larger. And keep that in mind because this mother archetype will come into play in the mythology. And Ceres was discovered in 1801 and was first thought to be a planet, but then was reclassified as an asteroid. And then in 2006 was reclassified again, this time to a dwarf planet. And this was because there were some other objects, one of them being Sedna, which I talked about last week, and another being the asteroid Eris, and similar objects that were discovered around 2003. And then in 2006, they did this kind of big reclassification, which included Ceres and Pluto, which was demoted from a planet to a dwarf planet. And Ceres's orbit around the sun is 248 Earth years, which happens to be the same as Pluto's, even though Pluto is about 3 times the size of Ceres. And it's been explored, and it's known to have this layer of salt water underneath what's really just rock and ice. So that is the astronomy that I've found so far, and that comes from space.com, which I'll put down in the show notes. And then the mythology of Ceres, that could be an entire show or almost an entire book because it is one of the pivotal myths in Greek mythology. So I'll try to give more of an abbreviated summary. So Ceres is also known as Demeter in Greek mythology, and that name Demeter is from an ancient form Demetra, which means Earth Mother. So Ceres was the goddess of the earth, the great mother. She was married to Zeus, who happened to be her brother and was the king of all the Olympians, along with the other siblings. And in the myth, Ceres was just so happy with her daughter Persephone that they would just wander the earth, kind of having fun mom and daughter time. And then her other role, aside from being goddess of the earth, was goddess of the harvest and agriculture. So she was so happy that she had this daughter, like a mini-me, that she blessed the earth with this perpetual season of harvest, or the golden age. However, she was extremely possessive of her daughter Persephone as well. And she just thought that even though Persephone was getting older and she was so beautiful and getting a lot of requests from suitors, she just thought there's no man good enough for her daughter. So Pluto, who happened to be the brother of Zeus, Persephone's father, and Ceres, Persephone's mother. I know this is kind of odd these days, but apparently back then there was more incest. So anyway, Pluto became obsessed with Persephone. But of course, Ceres had denied her hand in marriage. But Pluto was obsessed, and one day Persephone was out picking flowers with, I think, some friends, and her mother not in the immediate vicinity. And as Persephone was like bending down to look at a narcissus bloom, Pluto like swept up in his black chariot and abducted her to the underworld and just like zipped up the earth right immediately after. So nobody saw her disappear even. And so Ceres enlisted her friend Hecate, which is the queen of the witches and also another asteroid that I love and that I'll talk about someday. But she enlisted Hecate's help, and they found her. They navigated down to the underworld because Hecate was skilled at doing that. They found her, and Persephone, again, there are slightly different versions, I think, of this myth, but at that time, Persephone, it was 10 days later, and she had become so hungry that Pluto was like, here, have some of these pomegranate seeds. And those, I think at the time, they represented sex. And so Persephone ate a few of the seeds, and then Pluto was like, aha, because that indicated that they had consummated the marriage. So again, this is one version. And then she was tricked, to being his wife. But another is that by the time Ceres came to retrieve Persephone, she didn't want to go. And she said, no, I want to stay with my husband. And she had grown warmed up to the idea of being the goddess of the underworld. So that, of course, infuriated Ceres. Either story would have infuriated her because she just wanted Persephone back with her and with her 24/7. So they all went to Zeus because his word would be, the final word. Unbeknownst to Ceres, Zeus had actually approved the marriage. He'd given his blessing, really, to Pluto. And that's one version. The other version is that he saw Pluto take Persephone and didn't do anything about it. But in either version, Zeus ended up saying, okay, you two are never going to agree on who gets to keep Persephone, so you're going to split her time evenly on Earth and in the underworld. And so when Persephone was on Earth, it was fine. Ceres was like, yay, mom and daughter time again. But when Persephone was in the underworld, Ceres just was so grief-stricken and angry that she didn't want anybody to really enjoy life. So she said, like, no more harvest during this 6 months when Persephone is in the underworld. And so that was at the time maybe used to explain the seasons and when things grew and when they didn't. And this myth was also central to these what's called the Eleusinian mysteries and the Eleusinian rites. And you may have heard of those, and they were told for like thousands of years. And what it seems to be is that they were initiating certain people into this kind of divine worship of Ceres. And as they went through the rites, it kind of took them through this mysterious passage of death and rebirth while they were still alive. But when the people came out of it, they were no longer apparently, afraid of dying. And I almost think there's this connection to today where there's this huge aversion to death, but it's masqueraded really as an aversion to aging and wanting to look young and preserved forever. So, but at the core of it, it's not that people really want to keep looking like, they're 25, but it's because death. It's because, we associate looking older with like getting closer to death. So, a few thousand years later, and we haven't really changed that much. So this myth, it'll also be reflected when I talk a little bit about all of the associations that have accumulated as we have had more experience with Ceres through the signs over time and in individuals' charts. Okay, so the timing of our awareness of Ceres and then the accumulated astrological correlations which have developed since are aligned to starting with the suffrage movement in the 1800s. So right off the bat, there's something that's going to be about women and about women's roles. And then key transits and happenings in the world seem to correspond with the time again later in the World War II kind of era when women had to enter the workforce, and then again later in the 1980s when there were a lot of latchkey children, when there were two-income families became the norm. And then subsequently, maybe men couldn't take it, but subsequently there was a lot of divorce, and then there was custody battles, single motherhood, either by choice or by circumstance. And then also these food-related complexes that we saw around anorexia and bulimia and diet culture. So all of these things started becoming prominent at the same time we were seeing kind of prominent Ceres transits. And when I say that, it's certain placements, especially kind of posed against Pluto, which makes sense with the mythology. So in our birth chart, Ceres is represented by a scythe, which is that C with a cross on the bottom. And it's that tool that was used to cut down wheat. Not that helps. I don't think we see that either. But what it represents is our capacity to unconditionally love and nurture ourselves and others. And where it's placed in the birth chart indicates where we search for this unconditional love and nurturing most. It also represents nourishment through food, and the flip side of that, issues with food, and attachment and detachment, love and loss, rejection, parent and child roles, self-worth, care for the earth, appreciation of the season. So you'll see those themes from the mythology and then also from what we saw happening in history. And I'm going to go through the sign and the house significations, and these are all from this excellent book. It's called Asteroid Goddesses by Demetra George, one of my heroes, and Douglas Bloch. And they provide much more detail, including the potential imbalances that this chart placement can bring, as well as some examples of famous people with the specific placement. So if you want more, please purchase that book. It has so much more than what I'm going to talk about now. It goes into this theory of how these asteroids connect. Remember how I said they were between Mars and Jupiter, but how they connect the personal planets to the outer or more social planets, and then to those generational planets. So Ceres significations by sign. I'm sorry, my dog is going crazy. I'm not sure if you can hear that in the background, and she's downstairs, so I can't go get her. But I'm sure there's just somebody delivering or maybe walking by. So apologies. Okay, Ceres by sign. Aries. There's an identification of nurturance through being allowed an appropriate level of independence. So they would nurture others through promoting this self-sufficiency as well that they appreciate. Then Taurus, they receive nurturance through physical substance, touch, and being given stability, and would nurture others similarly. It could also, one of the things that they mentioned was just maybe almost pampering yourself too much, or others. And then Gemini, they nurture through being instructed or talked to and listened to. So those kind of Gemini themes, and they nurture others through communicating knowledge. Cancer, they receive nurturance through bonding with the mother, feeling loved, being fed, and they express nurturance through emotional bonding and holding space for feelings. Leo, they feel nurtured when allowed to express themselves, and in turn, they nurture others by facilitating self-expression. Virgo identify nurturance with working towards perfection or through acts of service, and they nurture through mentoring others to achieve excellence or teach abilities to serve effectively. Libra, they identify nurturing with cooperation. They express nurturing through imparting instructions to others on how to maintain harmony and egalitarian relationships. Scorpio, they feel nurtured when they receive intense and deep emotional bonding. They express nurturing through emotional commitment and acting as a catalytic agent to transform and heal. Sagittarius, they receive nurturance through being granted the freedom to explore and expand their horizons. They express nurturing by teaching others to expand their mental and experiential horizons. Capricorn, they identify nurturance through recognition of effort and achievement. They provide nurturing by teaching responsibility and practical skills. Aquarius, they identify nurturing with individuality. They express nurturing by helping others to be free to be their unique selves. Pisces, they identify nurturing with compassion. They receive nurturance through feeling connected to a reality beyond themselves. And then through the houses, the first house, projection of one's personality as nurturing, sympathetic, and concerned for others. They may identify as being a parent or provider, and it may be necessary to nurture themselves. The second house, an urge to nurture by providing tangibles. They may become overly attached to sources of nurturance. Third house, nurturing through feeding ideas, teaching, and exposure to a variety of stimuli. They nurture others through creating access networks to people and information. The fourth house, this is really the most pronounced placement because Ceres is naturally associated with the IC, or that, bottom midpoint of your chart. So all of those Ceres themes may be pronounced if your placement is very close to the IC. And there may be this idealized image of mother and home, and one's role as a parent or the home foundation may be prominent. The fifth house experiences nurturance through children and or creativity and is nourished by play. The sixth house, nurturing through the daily tasks, especially where family is involved, and through health and nutrition. The seventh house, it points to a need to nurture or be nurtured or protected by their mate. One parent is often a role model, likely subconsciously, for their relationship needs. Unconditional love is an essential foundation for an egalitarian relationship with this placement. The eighth house indicates receiving nurturing through intense experiences and deep emotional intimacy. Sex is often a necessary component of nurturing. The ninth house suggests nurturing oneself and others through mental and experiential expansion of horizons. This could also suggest prominence of mother figures in their religion, such as Mother Mary. The 10th house involves caring or providing through one's profession or status. Careers may tend towards Ceres themes like children's services or providing stable homes or the food industry. It's possible that love gets linked to achievement. The 11th house symbolizes extending nurturing into the collective, such as one's chosen family or co-ops or communes, or the support of humanitarian work, and one may receive nurturing through friend groups. The 12th house denotes karmic themes of how the responsibilities of parenthood and nurturing of others through birth and death and loss are instrumental to nurturing the universe. So in the sky, Ceres has been in Capricorn since February and has been making this square to the asteroid Chiron since early April. And will move out of this square aspect in about a week. So given what we've learned that Ceres represents and what Chiron in Aries represents, which is around where our core wounding is and where we need to explore that wounding and then work on self-healing. And because it's in Aries, sometimes it's really hard to see because it's so intrinsic to ourself. Aries is self. So it's exploring that, it's working on the self-healing, and then it is using that knowledge gained to help heal others. So with this square aspect, which is kind of a tense aspect, it's like you really have to pay attention and work with both of those energies to avoid suffering. So with that square, with Ceres and Chiron, it seems to emphasize boundaries and codependency. So when you're looking at, both of these themes, plus the fact that Aries has been emphasized with the North Node there as well, and Libra is where the South Node has been, and our eclipses have been happening there, and Libra also can have these codependency issues come up in the same way that I talked about Ceres and her daughter. So maybe there's also some theme of forgiveness, not as condoning behavior. So thinking about Ceres and Pluto, that she never, got over her daughter staying married to him. But maybe forgiving as a means of giving space to what happened, like just accepting it, so that she could have regained her identity and her well-being, as an individual, and not just as a role or for a specific point in time. So I think there might be this concept of a different way of looking at forgiveness, simply to be able to move on. And this brought to mind just our culture, which is so binary, and so many places you see we're forced to take sides, and people often become these stories almost, or tokens of something larger. So it's almost that we still create this mythology and these different versions of myths even now. So maybe we're meant to look at people and situations more holistically and just understand that they're reflecting back to us something about our society. So that is about all I have for today. And this finishes up my little dabble into Sedna and Ceres. And if you like this podcast, please follow it and leave a review so that other people can find it. And I also have a couple of other platforms. One is that on my YouTube channel, I do a video, a short one, like 5 to 10 minutes every Friday morning, just on the energy going into the weekend and for the beginning of the following week. And then I just started an astrology focused Substack, and that's on Substack, and it's at Maria Luz Astro. And of course, if you want to personally work with me, just visit my website, marialuz.online, or email me info@marialuz.online, and you can see what I offer around astrohypnosis, which is doing an evolutionary astrology focused reading and a past life regression in hypnosis, and then any other astrological consultations or chart readings and transformational hypnosis. And you can use the code AstroHip for 20% off your first service of any type. You are now empowered to become consciously curious about the dwarf planet and feminine asteroid Ceres. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.